All right, everybody, back with another one. Today, we're going to take a look at a couple of different things going on with the economy, mostly a little bit about politics. We're going to take a look at some stuff with um, faith and, the economy and business, like I mentioned, but we're looking to try and start integrating in each episode that we do long form a combination of different topics. So hopefully, it'll vary depending on what the episode entails, because some topics are, going to be longer than others, so they're going to take more time to break down. And sometimes we'll do an episode where we just talk about one topic, but for other episodes, I'm going to try and do, like I've been doing in the past, just a little bit cleaner, which is going to be a breakdown of a couple of different topics in different categories. Could be politics, health, business, whatever, and just try and do a little bit of the top trending stuff that's going on in the economy in America and in the world today. And then also, when we do more like deep dive historical stuff, it'll be more just focused on stuff that's not happening today, currently, or could coincide with stuff that's happening today currently, but will be stuff that is, going into the past. So it's not current event. And we're going to do that in a couple episodes. I have an episode planned where we're going to do a deep dive into something to do with the medical industry. So we'll get back to that at a later date. But it's going to be an interesting episode, and that's going to be an episode that focuses solely on that one thing. But, other episodes that we have, like when we have our guests on, like we did recently with Anthony Volpe, had him on for a interview and then also a podcast episode as a guest to just do some commentating, some talking about a lot of these points. We're going to do that a lot in the future too as we book more guests. We're going to have them come on to just kind of you know uh, be another party to bounce these ideas and conversations off of, and we'll just talk about these topics. But the idea is to sort of do a breakdown of a couple different categories of things that current events or whatever. So we're going to look to do that in these long form podcast episodes going forward, and then one episode will be um, a long form just on one topic and just a deep dive into that, and then some other stuff we've got planned. So as the channel continues to grow and as the podcast itself continues to get a more elaborate, we're going to try and do different things to make it um, interesting to want to continue to tune in, and also informative to, sort of give um, not just my take, but also what's actually going on, what the facts are in an unbiased way. And I'll add my take as my opinion, just based on my own knowledge and research from life and from things that I've done, experiences and stuff like that, and my experience in different industries in the world. Um, but it will be, I'll try and be as fair and unbiased as I can, just to sort of talk about it sort of the way that the news used to do it before a lot of people got, very biased and very trying to push their agenda through whatever, is in the news cycle. We're going to try and remain very unbiased because the podcast overall is a place where we're going to be informative, tell the truth, and solve problems. That's the overall arching goal of this podcast. Uh, from a bigger standpoint, there's other things that are mission and what we're looking to do with this thing, and we're going to continue to build it over time and have a lot more different facets to it. But for the most part, that's the goal, is to just be a solutions based podcast. A lot of podcasts are about talking and having open dialogue, which I love. That is so important because that is really what helps us explore different ideas. But when you have ideas that are, I don't want to say solidified, but very grounded in truth, as though this is the way it is, um, we need to move past the point of just communication, just dialogue and discourse. And we need to get to a point of, okay, well, now how do we solve that problem and then move on with life? Because we don't want to just get caught up either in this realm where we do nothing but nonstop talk back and forth with each other just for the purposes of entertainment. At least that's my belief. Some of the goals should also be, okay, we talked about it. We came up with a solution for it. Now, how do we get that out into the world and make it actionable, make it something that we do, that we actually put into effect, and that we, resolve a problem with so that we can move forward as a society rather than just continuing to, spin our wheels and just having conversation for the sake of having conversation, kind of like going out to a bar and just hanging out and, BSing with your friend, and you're not accomplishing anything, but really entertaining each other, keeping each other company, human connection. That's all important, but at some point, it can't just be um, conversation for the sake of conversation. There has to also be a goal, sometimes, not always, um, to get to the bottom of certain things. So that's where the solutions comes into this podcast. I'm looking for it to sort of have an element to it that is solutions based, where we talk about ideas, we come to a conclusion, then we try and implement them in society. Whether it's me actively going out and doing something, or whether it's the audience taking the idea and then running with it in whatever way they can contribute that to society. It's all open source here. Anything that we, talk about is up for grabs. If it's an idea, it's not, uh, if it's my idea, if it's something I'm working on, I'm not going to put it out there. But if it's something that I put out there, you can all take action and do whatever it is that you see fit to get that in motion. That's the goal, and that's part of why I discuss these things on here is to, get the message out so that the more it gets out, the more chance it has of people doing something about it, taking it and running with it. Doesn't matter if it's my idea. It's not about, credit or, ego or any of that stuff. It's just about solving problems and, getting the country and the world to move in a better direction. And so that's just a little rundown of what I'm looking to do going forward. But I'll try and mix it up. I'll try and keep it to where it's not the same stuff all the time. And, it's just not just another echo chamber out there on the internet. So also too, if you have things that you want me to talk about, you have topics that you think would be good for the podcast, or even if you just have, you know, um, a specific thing that you would like to get my take on, put it in the comments. You can private message me if you don't want it out there publicly that it came from you, but let me know, and I will definitely look into it, see if it's a fit for the podcast. All right, so getting into it today, we're going to take a look at a couple different things. Number one is going to be the government shutdown. We're going to revisit that for a very specific reason, which I will talk about in a moment. We're going to take a look at an economic business thing, mass layoffs happening in a couple of different industries and companies across America. What does that signal for the future? And then we're going to get into the whole Brennan situation with his indictment, see what's going on there, and then talk about where that might lead. And then lastly, just another little quick thing, if I have time to squeeze this in, it's more of a faith thing, a faith topic. So we'll see if we have time to fit that in, but let's jump into it now. So first thing we're going to talk about is the government shutdown. And we're revisiting this again because it's an important topic, not just because it's been dragging on for a while, but because I said this, I think, in the last podcast that I spoke about it. It's about to break the record for longest government shutdown in American history. And that is only going to make it more of an important discussion in the news where, right now it's in the news a lot because it's a current event, it's happening every day. But I think once it breaks the record, it's probably going to get more and more attention because now it's the longest running ever. And so it's going to be something that people are going to really weigh in on now. Like, this is a big deal. It's getting serious. It broke the record. What's going on? Where is this headed? Now, I definitely have a feeling it's going to end, and I could be wrong. It's just a feeling that it's going to end before the end of this year. So it'll probably go back. The government will go back before the end of 2025. Hopefully, because that's another 2 months. But I think I have a feeling it might break the record. The government actually shut down on October 1st. Today, at the time of this filming, is technically November 2nd. So we are literally 32, 33 days in to the government shutdown. Right now, the record is 35 days, I believe. So yes, it is 35 days. It was December 22nd of 2018 to January 25th of 2019, also under Donald Trump during his first term, which is interesting enough because and this was done by the Democrats the last time too, where they did the same thing. They shut down the government and they held out against him to try and get certain things passed in the spending bills and stuff like that. it goes to show you that this is a tactic they use specifically on Donald Trump because he's the one of the few presidents that's actually willing to resist Congress and not put all the crap that they want in their bills just to get the bill passed so that they can get one or two items passed in the bill and then look like a hero and go around bragging on the news, hey, I'm this Republican president. I got this, this item that my people really wanted passed and vote for me again next time. He wasn't even like that the first election, even though he was probably seeking a second term. He didn't care that they were shutting down the government. And at that time, he broke the record back then. And it was around the same time, obviously, because of the budgeting and everything. But, you had this one actually bled into the next year, into 20. So it encompassed 2 years, essentially, two different years in terms of the actual year itself. Um, but this was a big deal at the time because it was the longest running one, and it was because they were trying to get, certain things passed, but it wasn't happening. But eventually, I guess Trump learned how to, deal with them because they're clearly doing this as like a tactic. But I also think it's a last ditch effort for some stuff too, because I think that they realize that they're losing voters, they're losing their ability to, um, get these people in America to continue to vote for their policies because their policies are so extreme. Their policies are so extreme that they are really having a hard time getting Americans to buy into stuff that's going to actually hurt them. And on top of that, they are losing their base overall. Like the Democrats have been telling their voters for a long time, don't have children, you know, abort your kids, don't get married, don't, be a family type person. Uh, both men and women should go to work equally and spend all their time working and building their career life. And what happens is overall in the long term, you also sort of put yourself out of the market, right? Your voters are shrinking in size because you're having less and less kids. You're not growing the voter base by not having more children and increasing the population of your voter type. And then on top of that, you have these two people that are your voters, the guy and the girl in the relationship, let's say a Democrat couple, and they're off working all the time, building their careers, doing their thing. They're not thinking about voting. They're not thinking about all this stuff, paying attention to politics and stuff like that, following with what you're doing and telling them they're working their butt off because they're trying to build this career life that you've convinced them is the most important thing in the world, rather than building a team, a partnership as a married couple and, building a family. So their voter base has been shrinking for a couple decades now, especially with certain generations now that are older and haven't really had kids or maybe had one kid. That voter base is a smaller pool of people to get votes from. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the Republicans have been saying the exact opposite. They've been telling their voters for a long time, get married, have children, build a family. They're basically the party of, you know, conservatism and faith-based values like Christianity, Judaism, things like that. And so, the type of voters that they have to pull from have been growing over time. Even though the population is shrinking and the birth rate's going down, it's if you separate the categories, conservative, Republicans, Christians, Catholics, Jews, things like that, those birth rates are steady or slightly down, but not as bad as the other ones. The people who are Democrats, who are atheists, who are, liberals or, whatever other categories there are out there, um, they're dropping. Their birth rate is significantly crashing down. So over time, that's going to shrink the pool of people that you have to get votes from. And because of that, you have to come up with a way to replace those, right? There's a replacement cost to doing all the things that you're doing in terms of selling your voters on all of these ideas. So you're going to have to find another group of people to get votes from. If your voting pool is shrinking, what do? They try to get it from, illegal immigrants. Now, I don't really understand, much of how the government has allowed non-citizens to vote in any election, not just presidential, but local and stuff like that. Because according to the Constitution and United States doctrine, you are not allowed to vote for anything in this country if you are not a citizen of this country. Now, if you did get your green card and then eventually get citizenship, absolutely you're a citizen now. but you do have to go through a process in order to um, be granted that ability. And a lot of times, the people who go through that are illegal immigrants that come here and they go through all that hard work, they go through it the right way, they don't come into the country illegally, and they finally obtain citizenship. They tend to be a little bit more sympathetic and appreciative to America. And they also tend to vote a little bit more in certain areas, in certain cases, and in certain ethnic groups with the conservative side of things, because a lot of them are, seeking to attain the same American dream that Americans that are born and raised Native Americans here are as well. So it's the same mindset. And you see this a lot with a lot of different types of cultures, specifically that even though the Democrats convince some of them to vote that way, a lot of them that don't come, that come from different countries to America have values that line up very similar to conservatives, just a couple of different cultural things. So there's a lot of common ground there, but um, the ones that aren't legal and don't have citizenship, even if you give them an ID, a driver's license or something, that is not supplement for, you can give them a social security card, you can give them a driver's license. That still doesn't make them a citizen. So the fact that they're voting without being citizens by in itself is illegal. It's unlawful. It doesn't matter where it's happening. If it's happening at the state level, the local, township level, whatever, or the federal level with the presidential elections, it is illegal. It's unlawful every which way. And if it's being allowed to happen in those states, it's contradicting the United States Constitution. Whatever laws or bills they're putting through is null and void. And that's just the way it works. They're finding a way to do this by letting, illegal immigrants vote, and they're trying to pass all these things in these bills to convince them that the Democrats are on their side and they're going to do all these things for them if they just vote for them. And so that's why they're trying to squeeze into the bill free healthcare for illegal immigrants and all these other things for illegals, because that's their voter base. They're going by this is their last ditch effort to win elections going forward. And I think they realize that they're losing here, really not gaining much ground. They don't have much leverage. And in every single business deal, you need leverage. Even if you don't have the majority of the leverage, you need enough leverage to be able to negotiate what you want. And if you don't even have that, you really have no chips on the table. You have nothing to go by. So the other party is going to do whatever they want because they know that you have no leverage over them. So that's why Trump is not budging on this. But the Democrats also don't have a play. They just keep the government shut down. Trump has to find a way to make up the money in order to pay, people who are laid off right now that are essential, like, certain members of our military and things like that. But um, he's doing the best he can, and he's getting help from, private citizens as well as, you know, um, finding ways in the government legally to do that by moving money around and reallocating resources to, from areas that they don't want the money going to anymore to the people that are laid off. Um, but also a lot of this too is that the Democrats don't want Trump's administration to cut a lot of these social programs that, they've been wasting money on for so long that Doge, discovered, and, Trump himself was involved in, figuring out, where the money is being wasted and reallocating that to other things that are more important that the American people collectively agree is what they want. The Democrats really are fighting here for it's a last ditch effort for them, really, is to stick this out as long as possible and put the pressure on Trump by having his voters get really sick of, the government shutdowns affecting their businesses, affecting their jobs, affecting their lives, then to put the pressure back on Trump to say, do whatever the Democrats want just to reopen the government. And that's exactly what we don't want. That's a very lazy mentality, lazy attitude of surrender, give up, and just, doesn't matter whatever the opposing party wants, do what they say just so that we don't have to deal with the littlest, slightest uncomfort. Well, the bigger picture is the future of the nation, especially for our children. And so you have to go through pain. You have to go through a little bit of struggle in order to give ourselves and our children a better future. And Trump should stick this out for as long as possible because it's going to give him what he needs to finally put the nail in the coffin for a lot of Democrat politicians for a while. And I think that that's what they realize is coming down the pipe. I think they realize that the midterms are not looking good for them without these social programs to secure them the illegal immigrant votes. And if they don't do things like this now, when the midterms come up, they're going to be voted out in significant numbers. And then it's going to be very hard for Democrats to retake those seats in future elections because now there's a momentum that's going on. So I think that that's probably where this is headed, where the midterms, like I've said in the past, are probably going to be a big, I don't know, I don't want to say the whole red wave thing because that's been used in the past. That's kind of annoying. There's gonna be a shift in the election season, the way that we're gonna see it. We're definitely gonna see a lot of Democrats lose seats. We're gonna see a lot of turnover. We might even see several of them just retire because they're just tired of doing this and they don't see a path forward. Um, and I see that maybe more conservatives, more Republicans win those seats, and then it'll probably snowball into future elections. Like I said, we could have multiple seasons of Republican and conservative politicians in important positions in government for several terms. The government shutdown has been going on for, like I said, 32, 33 days right now. It's just 2 days away from the record and then 3 days away from breaking the records. If it makes it to 36 days, it's officially broke the record. Shutdown, federal shutdown for the government in American history. And you'll probably see this, pop up on the news maybe at that date. But right around November 5th, November 6th, they're going to break the record. So it will be as early as this Wednesday, this week. And if it happens, then we're in a new phase here with the record being broken, and now see how long this goes. Interested to see what I can't do a poll right now because this isn't live, but definitely put in the comments. Um, what your opinion on for how many days it'll be shut down. So do you, number one, think it breaks the record? And then if you do think it breaks the record, how many days do you think it goes past the record of 35 days? So if you think it's 36, if you think it's 40, 45, whatever, put that in the comments. I'm curious to see what you guys think the record, break will be, will it happen, and what the number will be. So moving on to the next thing, a business economics topic. We've seen a significant number of layoffs in this country in the last couple of months, especially in October, with a lot of companies reporting layoffs. They have a couple different things going on here. So I'll tell you the companies, I'll tell you the amount of employees that they've laid off about, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why. And we'll just take a look at that now just to see like what is the projection for the economy going forward. I have some theories on where I think things are going within the next 1 to 2 years. So we'll see. I'll voice my opinion on that. We'll see if they actually come true. But just some things that I've been sort of looking at from a larger view, looking at the big picture, and getting an idea as to what the outlook, the forecast is going to be in this country for the remainder of Trump's term. So mass layoffs have Amazon being right up there at the top, which is about 14,000 confirmed, but reports of up to 30,000 corporate cuts total. So, obviously they have many, many, many employees. Amazon, it might be close to 1 million now. And this is just it's a small fraction of their total for the company. It's not a lot, but for people, if 30,000 people lost their job, that could be like an entire community. If they all lived in the same place, that would be like a town losing everybody in the entire town losing their job at the same time. So, they've had some, layoffs, and I think a lot of it has to do with they claim that it has to do with them overhiring people during the pandemic and then not needing as many now after they're going over their expenses, so they're just cutting back. Um, that's probably part of it. Some of it could also be related to the fact that they said that they were, going to be cutting employees over the next 8 to 10 years, I believe, up to like 2033, it might have been. Um, and then replacing a lot of positions with robotics. So right now they've already made, several robots that are within their companies that do all kinds of things in their warehouses and stuff like that. And they're implementing more and more. And over time, you're probably going to see a lot of those lower level jobs that are very routine and very repetitive that actually can be replaced by a robot, will likely replace that person. So it could be somebody who does the sorting of items, in their packaging facility. It could be the people who do the packaging themselves, where they put the product in the box and tape it up and get it ready to be shipped out, or the labeling or whatever. But there are different things that are very um, factory oriented that they have going on in their warehouses, which, back even like 50 years ago, a lot of that stuff was very much done by machines even back then. We had a lot of factories in this country that did all these repetitive things and processes. I mean, you think back even to Ford in the early 1900s when he invented the assembly line, which allowed him to mass produce his cars, long time ago. We're talking about 100 years ago now, which built his company, built his plant. That's what he was able to build his company on, was the assembly line, not so much the car itself. And it was just a way to mass produce these cars by, having many people in a um ch certain position in the assembly chain. And by the time the car got to their spot, they would add a certain thing to it, and then it would move to the next one. And it just allowed them to have a flow that kept the car build continuous so that it would move quicker and they could build more cars in a shorter amount of time. So, for us to be in 2025 and Amazon and other companies still have, forget about robots, just even machines themselves not doing a lot of the stuff that these people do. It's actually kind of surprising that we're there today. So it's kind of surprising that some of these warehouse jobs exist in this current day when we've had assembly lines and factory machines for a long time in this country, 100 years. So, I definitely see a lot of those jobs going away. I definitely see a lot of other types of routine jobs going away that, don't really, number one, involve much human interaction, and number two, involve repetitive routine tasks that if you can just train something, non-human to do, it's possible that it can be replaced. So something to think about for the future, especially for the younger generations. If you're looking to get a job in any industry, just think about if that job could possibly be taught to a robot or programmed into a robot, and could a robot do this? And if they could, there's a chance that your job can get replaced down the road. Now, will that happen now or in 15 years from now? We don't know. Just something to think about for the younger generations. So that's what's going on with Amazon. You have a lot of job cuts with UPS right now, which is about 48,000 job cuts. This also happened recently. It's been reported in late October. And also adding one more thing to the Amazon um, situation, they have confirmed that they're going to be replacing, I think it was something like 600,000 people with robots. But they've also said, a statement from somewhere, they've deployed their 1 millionth robot. A new generative AI foundation model was designed to make their entire fleet of robots smarter and more efficient. Amazon's been working on this for a long time. And something I'll add to that before we go back to the UPS thing, a lot of this has to do too with the unions. So Amazon has been getting pressure put on them for years now because they want to, a lot of unions are trying to unionize Amazon because it's such a big company, and they said that they have unfair business practices. They treat their employees like slaves and all that stuff. And elements of that are true, but the ultimate thing is, this is America. You don't have to work anywhere if you don't want to. You can find a job somewhere else, or you can, um, you know, people do this in situations. If you get laid off from somewhere because they replace you with a robot, you go on unemployment, you look for something else. Worst case scenario, again, this is America. You could build your own business. You could start your own company. You could do so many different things. This is the land of opportunity. So, for union people to say that the unfair conditions are, so bad that you need a union is a little misleading. To a point, yes, unions do help a bit here and there, um, just because it is good for the people to collectively have a voice against the corporation. Because we've also been down roads in the past where people just got so complacent and the corporations got so much power that they wielded it over the people and made them feel as though if you don't, fit into the mold that we have for you, we'll crush you. And you do need a little bit of a balance there where the employees do get to speak up and the corporations have to hear them and have to try and help them achieve some of their goals as well, without hurting the company, negatively impacting the company. It can't just be for a corporation only about money and you're willing to sacrifice your people, you're willing to sacrifice the environment like we've seen in the past with pollution from companies and stuff like that, and so many other things. So I'm not saying unions are all bad, but this is a result of that, putting pressure on these big companies, especially in today, the age of technology, where we are in the 1900s, 1800s, and 1900s, we went into a industrial revolution where everything was mechanized. Now we're in the, late 1900s, early 2000s, which sort of followed suit with the 1800, 1900 industrial revolution. We are now in the technological revolution, and we're only about 25, 30 years into it. If you really think of the grand scheme of things, I mean, yes, you had computers come out in the, 40s, 50s, 60s, all that stuff, but they didn't really become household until the 90s. And then, when they did, there was not as much of a spotlight on it. It wasn't in our everyday lives. Many homes back then didn't even have computers. Some did, some that could afford it had one that the whole house shared. No phones, nothing like that, except, telephones, but not cell phones. So you do have, um, we're in this age of technology now where we're only 20, 30 years into it. It's still very new. It's not totally brand new, it's still very new. And you have these unions putting pressure on a big giant behemoth like Amazon. And entrepreneurs, innovators, they're always going to think of ways to solve problems to go around the issue that they have. Either you figure it out and crack the code or find a way to navigate around it and not let them stop the momentum because that's so important to a company. You don't want to lose momentum. Um, and these unions are putting pressure on Amazon for a long time, several years now, that it's going to cause Amazon to have no choice but to replace many people with robots because it can't have the people, trying to stifle Amazon's growth. Amazon is on a plan, especially Jeff Bezos, to build the biggest company in the world, which he already has, but to turn it into a behemoth even bigger than it is and have it be something that is, you know, just at another level, like getting packages delivered, same hour, eventually with drones and stuff like that. Like they've already been approved for certain drone fleet things and stuff like that with the FAA and other things that they've been working on. He clearly has a plan to roll out over the next, 10, 20 years because he's not an old guy. He's still kind of young. He's not super old, but he's not super young. He's got a lot of, like 30 years, 20, 30 years of a career left in him building this company. And so he's going to eventually have drone fleets. He's going to eventually have, a drone. You order something, it flies it out of the warehouse, and within an hour or so, depending on how far you are from the closest warehouse, delivers it right to your door. And things like that are just going to keep going, growing and growing more and more. And it's not just the delivery stuff with Amazon's warehousing. They have the web services. They have Whole Foods. They have so many different things. Having a union stifles growth. If you've ever looked at any company that has a union in place, it crushes growth and innovation because the people now abuse what the union was originally designed to do, which was to give the voice of the people, give the employees a voice to be able to speak to the power, the corporation on their behalf, to be able to not be treated like slaves, but instead be treated like human beings and be given a fair shake. It went from that to every year they try to keep renegotiating to get more and more. They give them an inch, they take a mile. They want more. They want to have like what they went from was wanting a voice to be treated fairly to now wanting to be treated better than anybody else. And that's where the unions are today. If you look at many different industries, you have union and non-union. Union always gets paid more money. They work way less hard. They do a good job in certain industries and their craftsmanship and their work is great because they're experts at what they do. But they will, abuse a lot of those privileges. They stretch things out way longer than it needs to be. It could be done much quicker, but they want to maximize the amount of time and money. They take a lot of breaks. I mean, it's notorious that, you take a union break like every hour. It's like a notorious thing in many different industries and unions, especially like blue collar trades. So this type of stuff is why the unions are having such a hard time unionizing big companies like Amazon because they've abused the privilege of having a union. They took it from being a fair thing for the people to now being this luxury club that you're in. And you got to make the cut to and it's all the stuff. But to be honest, at the end of the day, really unions go back to socialist countries like Italy, where they created all this stuff and brought it to America. It was never an American idea, unions. It's actually kind of antithetical to what our nation is and what it was created to be. We're supposed to be a community, but we're also supposed to operate on an individual level as well. Merit should matter more than just being part of a group or a class system. How hard you work. The guy who shows up every day and works his butt off deserves the pay raise, deserves to make more money than the person to his left and right. Deserves to get the promotion quicker and so many other things because he's putting in the extra effort, which is doing a better job for his company, his customers, clients, whatever, and also kind of benefiting his employees that are not working as hard as well. Because if the company does better, it has more money to take care of its people. It's just the way it works. So everybody should operate that way, but many people don't. And we've developed this mindset of, we'll just fight the power of the corporation and take from them, like especially what's happening in New York with Mamdani and the mayoral race that we've spoken about on here before. They want to take more from the rich, and they're not working as hard or willing to work and do that thing, so they're jealous, so they just want to take from the rich who have worked their whole life to build that thing up. They want to say, okay, great job. Thank you for building that. Now we're going to take it from here. Unions operate in a similar way. You built this whole thing up, and now they want to take their share because they say, well, it's not fair that you get to make all this when we helped you build it. Yeah, but you helped in a very isolated way. You helped in your job role. The person who built the company ran all the departments. They ran everything. They were the head of everything. They were responsible for all of those things, all of those departments, everything that they encompass, and all the people within them, as well as being responsible for the customers, as well as being responsible for so many other things, the financials, the market, the industry, overall big picture. So the unions come from a socialist mindset. The corporations come from a capitalist mindset. If they could find a way to meet in the middle, yeah, maybe they can make things work, but it's hard because people's egos get in the way. So what this is going to do is the unions are going to cause big companies like Amazon, especially tech-driven companies that are familiar with technology or even building it themselves. They're going to find ways to integrate robotics, AI, cryptocurrency, and other type of technological advancements that we've seen in the last 10 years. They're going to find ways to build those into their company and take away from the distraction and the slowdown of the unions trying to put pressure on them. So basically, Amazon's doing this now. They're going to replace a bunch of employees because they're saying, well, it's going to save us money. Our profit margins are going to go up. But also, we have this really big problem here with the unions pestering us, trying to unionize our employees, and we don't want that. But they're probably going to gain enough pressure over time to be able to be successful because that's just typically what happens with unions. Once they set their eye on something, if they just keep pushing at it, they tend to win because they eventually convince enough of the people to join them, and then that puts pressure on Amazon. You can't fire 500,000 people and then replace them with 500,000 other people in one shot. It wouldn't work that way. It would be a madhouse. So they would have pressure put on them if that many people got together and band together and decided to fight against a big corporation like Amazon. Amazon would eventually have to come to an agreement with the unions. So what they're saying instead, it looks like, is, well, forget it then. We're not going to go with this union thing, but they're not going to give up. So there's only one way to really get away from this. Replace the people with robotics. There'll be less people to fight against us. The robots don't fight against us. So we will eliminate the problem by eliminating the people from the equation and just replace them with robots. So the unions are almost kind of causing these people to lose their jobs over time through robotics replacement because they won't stop pestering the big corporation to pay their fair share. When in reality, they're trying to help the employee. They're going to be the very reason that pushes the employee out of the job and gets them replaced with a robot. unions really need to be isolated to specific industries, certain industries, especially when you deal with the government, maybe. Um, those type of jobs could probably be unionized to a degree, or subsidiaries like non-GAOs and stuff like that. Um, because then there's a little bit more where the people have a voice. Or with private corporations, anti-monopoly laws really do enough to stop the company getting so big that it can treat the people like slaves, and those have to be enforced. Aside from that, you really don't need unions. Unions are good, like I said, for city things. Like if you're a police officer in a major city like New York, you're in a union, and that's fair because now the people have a voice against the government, and the people are supposed to be the government in America. But you don't really want to take that to private corporations. Leave it at the government level. So that's why that's going on with Amazon. So back to UPS now. They cut 48,000 jobs. Now, this actually ties into Amazon. They cut 48,000 jobs, which sounds like a lot because it's significantly more than Amazon cut. But they actually have about 490, 500,000 employees globally. So they only cut about 10%. But 10% is still a significantly high number when you think about a layoffs all in one time period. But it's because of what's happening with Amazon is the demand has dropped for Amazon over time, partnering with UPS as one of their carriers to deliver packages because they started their own fleet. They have their own, they outsourced their own, Amazon. They basically have all these, private companies, smaller companies, um, buy the package to set up their delivery business, and then they get licensed all that stuff from Amazon. So it's like they started a delivery service franchise essentially, and then sold people on the franchises. They have to buy the van, they have to buy the attire, like whatever the uniform is they have to wear, whatever technical equipment they need for scanning boxes and stuff like that, and then whatever other stuff goes in with that business. They have to buy all that stuff from Amazon and from whatever subsidiaries they have, and they basically sell them that, and then Amazon gets a percentage of that business for each company they sell it to, each franchise. So they've essentially created their own fleet, their own delivery driver fleet, and that put UPS, who's worked with them for a long time, they basically created competition for their business partner UPS and sort of pushed them out of that game, saying, we've needed you to get this far. Now we're going to cut you out of the deal and build our own fleet. And then what I think is probably going to eventually happen is they'll replace all the actual drivers with robotics, and then cut all of the people that they went into business with, um, in the delivery driver business that they built, cut them out, and now they have robots doing that as well. So again, not saying Amazon is the hero in all this because they're not. They're operating just like any other big corporation. They definitely do things that are, not shady, but cutthroat. They do things that are not in the best interest of anybody but their profits or the higher up executives. And a lot of big corporations are guilty of this. Still not a reason to unionize, but this is why UPS has these layoffs. It's a significant amount. Now, their biggest customer was Amazon, so this is why this is happening. But then UPS is going to have to go and get a bunch of new big customers to replace Amazon so that they could bring their revenue and everything back up and stay in the game. So this is not a good situation for them to be in, but they are probably going to find a way to navigate around this because the demand is still there. People still need packages delivered, and there's so many businesses now that ship things versus have physical brick and mortars that you go pick stuff up from. There's a lot more online companies now. Even companies that have brick and mortars have online businesses. So the demand is going to be there for a long time for delivery drivers. And if UPS, like these other companies, stay technologically up to speed on things and eventually get into the future of whatever delivery looks like, I think they'll be around for a long time. And I think this is just a hiccup in the road for them. But you had UPS being another one, and then some other big companies that had layoffs recently were a lot of companies related to EV because of Trump. I believe it was in the big beautiful bill that we talked about. He had the clause about getting rid of the EV mandate, which now you're seeing a lot of companies are the repercussions of that now are they're shutting down or laying off, significant numbers of their employees in their EV department because they're either going to be changing the way that looks or they're going to be shutting it down completely because of the mandate. changes. So you have General Motors laid off about 3,300 EV and plant roles, and then you had Rivian, another big up and coming company that um, is in the EV space. They were doing good for a while, but this definitely probably hurt them a little bit. They laid off only 600 employees, but still that's a lot for a smaller company. And then you got Target, completely different industry, laid off 1,800 positions. Oracle, about 3,000. Paramount, Skydance, 1,000 now. Could be up to 2,000. But I think the reason they did was because I think Skydance recently bought Paramount, so they're doing a post-merger corporate restructuring, and they just realized they didn't need those roles. They're going to either maybe replace them with AI or just restructure the company to, you know, uh, figure out some other way to, reallocate those departments and jobs. But that one doesn't seem like it's an economic thing. It seems like it's just a corporate restructuring thing. And then Nestle as well, 16,000 worldwide. So those were the layoffs. That's pretty much what was going on here. Now, in terms of the economy itself, I definitely see that the tariffs, that inflation, that, other factors like these EV mandates and, the stuff that we just talked about with Amazon is definitely affecting the economy. Not to mention, the Fed, the way that they're doing things with the rate decreases and how they're stretching that out, really over time. That could be a good thing and a bad thing, but for the most part, we'll see over time. A lot of this stuff doesn't look good for the economy, but it also doesn't look bad because we also have record stock market days and things like that. Crypto was up, Bitcoin broke, all-time high record just the last couple of months this year. So you definitely have both good and bad things. Seems like the economy is both fighting, post-recession period, and then also fighting to struggle to come back, and have an extreme, increase. My outlook is I think 2026 looks like a great year for America. It might even end up being one of the best years this country's ever had. And I think a lot of it has to do with you'll probably see a lot of wins politically with the Trump administration. You're already seeing a lot of deals get put into place, trade deals and things like that, all kinds of stuff, not to mention the tariff money coming in and then taxes, being cut and decreasing, and some changes probably happening there soon with the IRS departments. So you're going to see a lot of what Trump put in place this year in 2025 finally take effect and have positive repercussions in 2026. I think that 26 ends up being a year of the results of what Trump did in 2025. It's probably going to be one of the greatest years ever, not just from that standpoint, but you also have, spiritual resurgence in this country with Christianity. You also have the 250-year anniversary of this country, making it a landmark milestone for the longest country with a constitution that has still stood from its founding and is still currently actively being, pursued and lived by in this country today. Longest constitutional country in world history, America is. So it's going to be a big year. You're going to see a lot of positive things. I think you're going to see a lot of American revival and resurgence and Christian revival and resurgence as well, which we're already seeing. And you're probably going to see a lot more, patriotism might make a huge comeback. You might even see many people who were doing bad things, hurting this country for a long time, finally get justice, delivered to them. But there's a lot going on. And I feel like the spirit and the energy is that there's going to be a good year ahead of us with 2026. With that said, it's uncertain, but there's a good chance we have a really bad downturn after that because that's just typically how things tend to go. And there are other factors that are, you know, going to play a role in the future. I don't want to talk about everything on this podcast right now because we are already at the end of the podcast. So we'll do other episodes about this throughout the year to get to that when we get closer to that point. But essentially, you'll probably see 2026 being a booming economic year, a great year to take advantage of, investments or building your business or, advancements in your job, working harder to get that next position, promotion, whatever, take advantage. I think 2026 is going to be a good year for that. 2027, on the other hand, I have a feeling we're going to end 26 and go into 27 on a huge economic downturn. And 2027 might end up being, um, a mirror of 2007. So 20 years later, around the same thing happening where 26 was a great year, 2006 was a great year. I think it was actually the highest year. Home prices soared the highest they ever had in American history, and it was just a huge year. But a lot of it was built on fraud and waste and abuse, and a lot of that stuff Trump's cleaning up now. But back then, they didn't clean it up; it was just being done, and that's why we went through that recessionary period with the great financial crisis, the housing market crash. I think 27 mirrors that, but in a different way now. Now, there's something else going on too, that we'll probably talk about it at some point, so bespoke tranche opportunities, which is a replacement of what they did in 2008, with the CDOs and stuff like that on the housing market and all that stuff. We'll get into that in a later date in future episodes, but for now, I would say, like I said, I think there's a couple of factors at play that are rumbling underground that eventually will surface and they will wreak havoc on the economy. Now, I don't know when, and I'm not a prophet, so I can't say exactly. I don't know. It's just my best guesstimate based on assessing everything for now. Things could change in the future. I don't know. This is the present day. I only go by the present. Um, but 26 probably be one of the greatest years ever. Take advantage of so many opportunities if you can. 27 will probably be a really bad economic downturn. It could even be a crash. It could even be a recession or a depression. It could be one of the worst ever in this country. I don't know. But we're going to learn more as time goes on and see how things unfold. I just have a feeling that that's where we're headed. And then the future looks uncertain, but I believe it's going to be good in this country. I believe that we might end up, like I said, having good times of economic prosperity, many Republican politicians in place, holding that for several terms, really getting rid of a lot of the fraud, waste, and abuse in this country for a long time, and then finally getting justice on a lot of what has been wrong in this country for a long time. I also said in previous episodes, I believe the curse has been lifted, and we might end up going into a new future in this nation where we are, back to being restored with God's blessings and grace. So we will see what that looks like as well. And the last thing is, I think we're going to see a lot of people get justice that they rightfully deserve, whether it's the people who are the guilty party getting justice on them, or if it's the people who were the victims getting to see justice in their favor. And this is the last thing we'll rack up with is the whole John Brennan situation that he's been indicted and that he is, currently undergoing possibility of going to trial and going through the legal process for this whole situation with what he's being accused of lying with the CIA's involvement of the dossier, which had to do with the whole Russia collusion thing during Trump's era and how, them and some of the Democrats were behind this whole fake thing on purpose intentionally. And also they came out with something not too long ago about how Obama was allegedly involved in it, and there's absolute proof without a doubt. I've said this in the past, and I still believe it. I really don't think Obama goes to jail for whatever crimes he did. I don't think he's going to. I think it would be a situation where you'd have a lot of people be split on that, where you have people who see him as a president and they just don't think that's a fitting thing for a president is to go to prison. So they just probably would not be okay with putting Obama in jail. And I'm not even saying he should be because I don't know if, we don't have confirmation of the crimes and he wasn't convicted again in this country. When you are accused of something, everybody has the right to a trial of their peers. You go through the legal process, you're innocent until proven guilty. That said, my prediction, like I've said in the past, I believe, is that Trump's probably not going to let this go because this was a big thing for him. They really went after him and tried to get him with this whole Russia, collusion thing and the dossier and all that stuff. And if he has an opportunity to strike on these people and he doesn't take it, it shows him as being weak or it shows him as being scared of them. There's a chance that, and obviously he's not the one that's doing it, it has to go through the courts and all that stuff, and the judges get to decide, but I'm sure his influence weighs in on some of that. Now, my opinion is if Brennan does go through the trial process, he will probably be convicted because there's enough evidence on him, I'm sure. Again, this is just allegedly. Don't call me on that because I don't know. I'm not involved in the legal case. but just from seeing things over time, they'll find enough evidence, I believe. But the other thing is, there were also many people that did not like him and that said that he wasn't a good guy. And if you have enough people that hate you and they have an opportunity to finally get vengeance on you, they're probably going to, even if it's justified, if it's through the legal system and they're not going out and doing anything to harm you, but to finally given the information to support the case against him, they'll pro what I'm saying is the courts, the judge, the lawyers that are going after him will probably find enough people willing to cooperate and give the evidence they need to convict him. That being said, if they do convict him, I believe, my opinion, Comey would be next. They'll probably convict him next because if they can get Brennan, they could probably get Comey. And if they can get Comey, you will set a precedent in this country where you have two people involved with high agencies, the CIA and the FBI, also policing agencies that are part of our law enforcement system. If they go down, it opens up the door for other people who have been involved in these corrupt activities and fraud, in waste and abuse, in straight up tyrannical things, who are traitors to this nation. It opens up the door to say, well, we were able to get these people convicted. If we can get them, we can get the lesser people. It's almost like the way they did it with the mafia back in the day, where they tied the lower level mafia um, people to the higher level bosses, and they did it through the RICO Act and all that stuff. If they could apply that same concept to this, they might end up bringing down a whole bunch of people that were corrupt in our government for a long time, and they might end up finally getting justice in this nation, and also showing bad guys out there. Nobody's above the law for real, and if you commit crimes and even go against our nation and commit treason and things like that, this is what awaits you. And America's finally back, and the people are finally, they fed up enough to where they finally decided to support the people that are going after the true crooked politicians and corrupt people in our government and taking them down and actually truly draining the swamp the way that Trump had originally intended when he first took office back in 2016. I think that's my prediction. Again, I don't have any. So what I'm saying is alleged in terms of what could be the conviction and what the parties are guilty of, because I'm not involved in the court cases at all. I'm just commentating on it. But my opinion is that it stands if they get him to a trial and they get enough evidence on them because they get people willing to cooperate, you'll probably see Brennan get convicted. And if Brennan gets convicted, I seriously think it's like a 80+% chance that Comey does as well. After that, you'll probably see other politicians and corrupt people in the government go down as well for cooperation with this whole thing. I don't think you'll see any major politicians. I know people have said this on the internet before. I don't see it. I don't see somebody like Hillary Clinton or, Bill Clinton or Obama going down and getting arrested and getting, thrown in jail. That just doesn't seem like a reality to me. What seems more like a reality is even if they do get charges brought against them and they get convicted, they'll probably get a sentence that is not a slap on the wrist, but it'll be in their favor. It could be something as simple as house arrest. So they have to just, live in their mansions, and not leave except during certain time windows, for a set amount of years. That's not going to bother them. They'll do that no problem. They'll figure it out, and they'll probably find workarounds. I don't see those people going down like that. Those people are probably going to be judged by God when their time comes for the crimes and treason that they committed against this nation, if they did, allegedly. For the people that are lower level, there's always got to be a fall guy. So some of those people are probably going to go down. And I gave my opinion on who I think these first few might be. Now let's see what happens. But I think we're headed for a chain reaction within the end of 2025, going into 2026, of some of these major players finally getting justice brought against them. Getting convicted for the crimes that they committed. Whatever the punishment may be, I don't know, but at least getting fully acknowledged by the court of law that they broke the law, that what they did was illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional, and possibly even treasonous, and they will have justice served. So that's my take on that. Those are the topics for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to put in the comments about the government shutdown. What do you think the amount of days that they're going to go are, and do they break the record? And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Like we always say, holidays are fast approaching. We're in November now, so it's a great time to start ordering if you haven't already. Um, the clothes from the apparel shop, anything we have on our Amazon storefront, which is going to be on sale a lot now this month because of the holidays, and the my children's book, Little Boy Full of Love. Stay tuned for the ad at the end of the video. It will show you all of that stuff and where to get it. And also check the show notes. A lot of the links are down there. You can find everything very easily. Well, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment to promote my children's book. This is Little Boy Full of Love. That's me on the back. And this is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. It's a children's book. I actually wrote this for my son. And it's available right now on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, and a lot of other online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's actually available in a lot of bookstores throughout the country. You can find out which ones are closest to you on my Instagram page. You know, we highly recommend that you shop local, buy from a local bookstore. So if you are looking to, get a children's book for you or anybody you know, or even with the holidays coming up, it's a great time to, buy a children's book as a gift. Definitely get it from a bookstore that's local to you. But if you absolutely can't get it from one of the bookstores that are currently carrying it right now, and we're in about 15 or 16 different states across the country, so it may actually be in your state, and it could even be local to you. But if you can't get it from the physical bookstore, check out our Amazon storefront. The book's available on there right now. And like I said, with the holidays coming up, you may want to do your Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday shopping early, and you can even order it from our Amazon storefront and ship it directly to whoever you're gifting it to. But it's available on those platforms. Amazon storefront and bookstores and other websites that I mentioned. But I want to take a moment here to look at the storefront just to give you an idea of some other stuff that we have available on there. These are products that we highly recommend. They are things that we use in our daily lives, and it's all organized by category. So it's a lot easier to, shop for the holidays and specifically for things that interest you, particular categories. Available right now, many different items on our storefront. If you can see here, 61 items just in women's apparel, fall decor, because right now we're in fall, 26 items, kitchen items, baking specifically, things for around the house, children's toys, even stuff for parties. If you're trying to save money on a party and throwing your own, occasion, you can even buy some cool gadgets here to help you, put on a better party. Health and wellness items here, even stuff for Christmas. And there's the book right there. So you can get it from the storefront. You can get it from the bookstores, like I mentioned. But it's available on all these different platforms. It's really easy to find and gift to somebody. Also, I want to show you the apparel shop, and these are some clothing items that we actually produced. So if you're looking to get some cool apparel items, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, leggings, even accessories, cell phone cases, women's makeup bags, fanny packs, coffee mugs, all different types of stuff, even some, art, all different categories here, apparel, homeware, accessories, drinks, even digital items. It's all on this store, healthybodygoodsoul.com. Anything that pertains to you or somebody that you're looking to get a gift for the holidays. A lot of great designs on here, a lot of cool designs that we actually custom created. Stainless steel water bottles, especially now with the fall and winter. A lot of cool hoodies and long sleeve shirts. This is a really cool one, I think, for women. The original Be Your Soul apparel, that one's actually really popular. People tend to like that. This one's one of my favorites. The free shirt.
It's the American flag, and it says free, and that says not property of the United States government. That one's pretty cool. Got all different types of tank tops, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, tote bags, coffee mugs, even some items for kids, backpacks. So if you're the type that likes to, plan ahead, I would definitely recommend ordering from the Amazon storefront or the apparel shop within the next couple of weeks to get everything in time for the holidays. Use code SAVE15 on the apparel shop to save 15% off everything on the storefront. So order within the next week or two, and you'll definitely have everything in time for the holidays. Definitely check out all the links to everything, the Amazon storefront, the book, and the apparel shop in my bio on all my platforms: Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. But you can also find them in all the show notes for every episode that I post, and get all your orders in time for the holidays. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel continue to grow. And put in the comments things that you would like me to talk about and make videos on for the future, and I will definitely do my best to do that. Stay tuned for the next one.